Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking to you about whether Islam really is a threat. Are Muslims here to take over? Is Sharia here to take over or not? So I think the best way to go about this is to look back into the Islamic doctrine and also look at history. So what did Muslims actually do historically? Now, this is of course not all Muslims, and I'm not saying that every single Muslim in Canada is trying to take over this way, but I am saying that part of the Islamic doctrine does mandate for Muslims to convert people and take over by force, and they are mandated to make Islam the only religion anywhere they go. So, knowing this, and this is why it's important to know this, because when Muslims come to Canada, if we understand what the Islamic goal is, it's easy for us to stand up against it so that we can protect our culture. So that's what we're going to do today. If you see my hair flowing in the wind, I'm not trying to be like some Instagram diva model here. I'm legitimately hot. I'm in my attic and it is so hot here in the summer. So I have a fan blowing in front of me and it gives me like the wind that you would see in a photo shoot. So I'm not trying to be, no. Okay, if we look at the Quran. So let's start first of all with what the Quran says. And to do that, I'm going to look at two passages today. And it's important to note that the passages that I'm going to mention are from the Medinan period. If you know about Islamic doctrine, you know that the Quran really contains two different eras within it, and the chapters were written within one of those two eras. The first era is the Meccan era, the second era is the Medinan era. In Mecca, Muhammad was very peaceful. He was trying to convert people by convincing them. In the Meccan period, the Medinan period after Mecca, he became a warlord and he launched jihad after jihad, and he converted people by force and slaughtered a lot of people. So the reason I mention these two epochs of the Quran is because the Medinan passages overwrite or supersede or cancel out any of the Meccan passages. So if you have anything that's in the Meccan era, there's a doctrine called abrogation that takes care of canceling it out in favor of a Medinan passage that was written later and therefore supersedes it. This doctrine of abrogation is found within the Quran, so it's not like some external thing that some scholars came up with. It is part of the Quran. It's a verse in the Quran. So let's get back to this one. I'm going to read you chapter 8, verse 38, if you're interested in finding the actual passage. So it says, "Say to those who disbelieve that if they stop, whatever is already past will be forgiven. But if they return, the customary way of those of old has already passed away. Fight them until there is no persecution, and the religion, all of it, belongs to God." So, what they're saying in this passage is, and it went over to passage 39, so it's 38 and 39 of chapter 8. And what they're saying is, say to those who disbelieve, so those are all the non-believers, people of the book, whoever's not a Muslim, whatever is already past will be forgiven. So if you stop believing in whatever you believed in before, and now you adopt Islam, you'll be cool. And if you return to whatever you believed to after you've adopted Islam, then you're going to be fought against, because it says fight against those people. So until all of it becomes to Allah. So all of it, not just, part of Saudi Arabia or part of the Middle East, all of it. It says all of it. Another passage I'm going to read to you is chapter 9, verse 29. It's often called, it's often quoted. This is a very, very famous passage. It's not the verse of the sword. I think verse of the sword is chapter 9, verse 5, but this is 9:29, and I'm sure you've heard this one before, but here goes anyways. "Fight those who do not believe in Allah or the last day, or do not forbid what Allah and His Messenger have forbidden, and do not practice the religion of truth from among those who have been given the book." Those are the Jews and the Christians, "until they pay tribute out of hand and they are disgraced." So this means you have to fight people of the book until they pay the jizya. The tribute is what is referred to as jizya. It's a poll tax. and they are disgraced. So they pay the jizya in a disgraced state because they did not believe in Allah. They did not adopt Islam as their main religion. So they are therefore allowed to keep their own religion if they are Jews or Christians and live in a Muslim land. However, they must pay a very high poll tax. Speaking of poll tax, I've mentioned this before in other videos, but if you think about having to pay Muslims, welfare is the new jizya. It was not commanded or part of the Quran because back then the Quran was not able to foresee that 20th century and then 21st century we would have welfare states. This is a fairly new thing historically speaking. Therefore, it wasn't mentioned that way. But when you think about it, the jizya, which is the poll tax paid to Muslims, is exactly what Muslims are coming for when they come to the land of the unbelievers. So think about all Muslims coming to Canada and how they come here as either refugees or just the immigrants, illegal immigrants, or even legal immigrants, and they bring their entire family. They go on welfare. We're essentially paying them jizya. It's new age jizya. It's 21st century jizya. So anyways, I got a bit off point there, but it's important to mention these things. So if you understand here that the Quran has commanded Muslims to fight until all of the world is Islamic, the most hardcore Muslims will take this seriously. How can you not? This is in the Quran, right? This is the book of Allah. This is what the Muslims are supposed to do. So now you understand why it's what people call hardcore Muslims, extremists or Islamists, they follow this. And when they come here, they will wage war on us. Now, there's multiple ways to do jihad, which is the war. You can do it violently by subjugating people and killing them. Or you can do it very, very incognito by slowly changing laws within their land. So in Canada, for example, if you were to start bringing Sharia courts and saying, we'll just use Sharia courts, which is the Islamic law courts, only for like family affairs. That way we don't burden the court of law of Canada. This is a sneaky way to bring in Sharia and impose the Islamification of Canada, because now all of a sudden you have a section of Canada that does not operate within the Canadian law frame and now operates within its own independent frame. And as Muslims, if they do happen to become numerous and more of them come in larger numbers, they will be able to impose their own court in an entire city, and then that entire city will be Sharia compliant, and we will have lost that control over that city to Islam. And it starts like that slowly, and it goes bigger and bigger. So speaking of that, this is exactly how the early Muslims did it. When Muhammad died, there was a couple fighting. They fought within themselves in Islam to decide, and this is how Shia and whatever Shiite Muslims came about. So anyways, the Sunni, the Shia, they had a big war right off the bat. Aisha was involved. Anyways, big problems within Islam right off the start. But what they did do immediately is they started the expansion of Islam. So what they did, and this is where I would refer you to a book called The Sword and the Scimitar. It's written by Raymond Ibrahim. I'm going to link it in the description below. Please read this book. It is very, very detailed in terms of all of the battles that were fought by the early Muslims soon after Muhammad's death in order to spread Islam. And Islam did spread, and it spread in an incredibly violent fashion. It was bloody slaughter. They would go into cities and villages and they would exterminate everybody, then take over their possessions as a war loot. And this is also in the Quran, by the way. And they would take the kids as slaves. The women would be brought over as sex slaves. The best women, the most good-looking ones, the blonde hair, blue-eyed, would be given to the high-ranking Muslims. And this is how it worked in the early Islamic days. And since then, Islam has always fought to become part of the land, and they're trying to take over. So yes, Muslims are mandated to take over. Do all Muslims try to take over? No, not all Muslims. Some Muslims are here and they legitimately just want to practice their religion within their home. They'll get their prayer mats out and they'll pray, and then they won't eat pork, and that's it. They're not trying to impose it on us. But understanding the core doctrine of Islam and understanding that their historical ways of doing things, the way they did things for 1400 years by taking over a country and spreading Islam within it by the sword, not by convincing people, not by giving people candy. It was not a very peaceful takeover at all. It was an invasion. It was an invasion. Invasion barbare, the Moors, all of those were Islamic invasions. We just don't hear about it because they were all segregated into these little words. And when you don't understand that they were all Muslims, you don't realize they were all advancing Islam. And it took about 400 years for the Christians to start getting together and fighting back against this. And this was the Crusades. The Crusade Wars was a defensive war after 400 years of Islamic invasion into Christian lands. So the Christians, for the most part, had spread their religion by convincing people to become Christians, and people adopted Christianity willingly. Islam came along and forced people to either you submit to Islam, you pay the jizya, or you get killed. This is how Islam advanced within the same area. This is how all of North Africa became Islamic. And they have not had their own crusade in North Africa, so they remained Islamic to this day. The Europeans fought back with crusade wars, and it was defensive. So please deprogram your brain to investigate, re-look at the history, because you have been fed propaganda that, you know, poor Muslims, Christians attack them. It's the exact reverse. It's the exact opposite way. The Muslims attacked first, and the Christians went and defended themselves after 400 years of being attacked. The good news is that if we understand this now, with the power of YouTube videos like this, with the power of Twitter, with the power of spreading information to a lot of people in a very short amount of time, with low budget and very little effort, we can inform people. So all you need to do as somebody in Canada, somebody in the Western world, is do not allow Islam to spread. You don't need to fight. You don't need to kill anybody. And I don't encourage that. I don't want anybody to go out and kill people. What I want to do is I want you to realize that Islam has an agenda to advance within our country. It is there to impose Sharia, without a doubt, and a certain percentage of the Muslims that are part of that will want to advance Sharia and make Islam the way of the West. But we can fight back. We can fight back by not allowing that to happen. If, for example, you see Sharia courts advancing, fight against it. Don't just let it go because you think it's just something that affects Muslims. There's a bigger agenda behind it, and if you understand that, you can stop it. When people say, don't bring marshmallows to a potluck because my Muslim and Jewish friends can't eat it, don't succumb. Just do it. The Jewish guys, they just won't eat it. I have Jewish friends, they just don't eat. When there's something that might have pork in it, they just don't eat it. But they don't try to force it on others. But the Muslims will try to make you change your menu or forbid you from bringing something because it has pork in it. That is the big difference. Big difference between what the Jewish people are doing and what the Muslim people are doing. So, this is not meant to be a video about Jews. Oh my gosh, now people are going to be crazy in the comment section. Oh my gosh, just look at that. But yes, just fight back now. Realize that Islam does have an agenda. Fight back. Do not let Sharia courts happen. Do not bow to Sharia. Do not excuse Muslims for their acts. Learn the true history. Do not let them get away with crying racism and victimhood at every time they can. Make sure that they abide by the same rules of the land. So if they're in Canada, you have to abide by our laws, not any other laws. Don't let them off easy. Everybody is subjected to the same law and the same rule of law in Canada. That is it. That's all we need to do. It's so easy and it's so non-violent. But be there. Be protectors of our culture. Go out and protect Canada. And that's all I had to say, guys. I am so happy you stuck to the end, and I will see you all in the next one.